acknowledge that Western University is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Attawandaron peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land and region of southwestern Ontario and City of London. The local First Nations communities of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. In this region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. Western values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America. Perfect. We'll now move into roll call. Council, you will find the ECHO 360 ID appendicized in the agenda, but once you have that put into your ECHO, please proceed to ECHO to confirm your attendance for this meeting. Just ask for anybody, is anybody having issue accessing the ECHO 360? Everyone was able to find the ID? Yep.
Those are...
Yeah, no worries. It's in the Slack channel and it should be in the Zoom as well. If you navigate to the Slack there, it's in main council meetings in the join Zoom link. Thank you, Council. We'll now move into the approval of the agenda for this meeting. Do I have a mover? President Shaw?
Motion. Motion to amend motion 6.
Sorry, President Shaw, we'll have to do a mover and a seconder before we move into any amendments. Thank you. I will still accept you as the mover for this, though.
Thank you.
Perfect. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Antonelli? Perfect. Are there any questions to the agenda? Are there any amendments to the agenda? President Shaw?
Motion to amend motion 6. And should I read out the amendments?
Please.
I move to strike the be it resolved statement. Council elect 1 councillor to serve on the service review committees for the 2026-2027 term. Replace that with be it resolved that council elect 5 councillors to sit on the service review committees, 1 councillor to sit on the review committees for each of the following services for the 2026-2027 term, which includes early outreach, charity, Enviro USC, public arts, and the income tax clinic.
Okay. Can you send me that in writing via Slack just so I can post it to the council?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will post the amendment in the main Slack channel so that everybody has a chance to review it. So reading out the amendment for council, the amendment for motion 6 is to strike the 3rd clause and amend it to read, this is the be it resolved clause, but be it resolved that council elect 5 councillors to serve on the service review committees, 1 councillor to serve on the review committees for each of the following services for the 2026-2027 term: Reach, Charity, Enviro USC, Public Arts, and the Income Tax Clinic. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hamilton? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, for sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making it bright and early today's council meeting. This change, the motion to strike the previous be it resolved statement comes from the fact that there was an administrative error in the wording of the motion. I'll get on more to explain what the service review committees actually were intended for later on in today's meeting, but the current wording suggests that there can only be 1 councillor from this whole council who sits on 1 individual service review committee. However, with the changes that were passed on council last year, we are reviewing services from the execs on a rolling basis. Next year, the 5 listed are the ones that need to be reviewed, so it doesn't make sense to have 1 councillor sit on all 5 committees. So the changed statement reflects this administrative decision from last year and ensures that there can be 5 councillors who sit on 5 different service review committees for next year.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Hamilton, would you like to speak to the amendment as well? Or? Okay, perfect. With that said, are there any questions to this amendment? Looking at the Zoom as well. Are there any amendments to this amendment? Seeing none. Is there any debate to this amendment? And are there any objections to this amendment? Perfect. Seeing none, I would ask council to vote via show of placards. Again, if you're on Zoom as well, wait until I call all in favor or all opposed first. But if you're voting on Zoom as well, just use the raise hand function. But I will begin with all in favor of the amendment. Please raise your placards. Or hands on Zoom as well. Just waiting for some hands on Zoom there. any abstentions? Perfect. Seeing none, that motion carries. So once again, just wanting to read this out again, that amends motion 6, so the motion to elect a counselor to the Service Review Committee, to read as electing 5 counselors to serve on the Service Review Committees, 1 counselor on each of the review committees for the following services for the 2026-2027 term: Reach, Charity, Enviro USC, Public Arts, and the Income Tax Clinic. Perfect. With that said, are there any other amendments to the agenda? Is there any debate to the agenda? Or are there any objections to voting on the agenda? Seeing none, I would invite council to proceed to Echo 360 to vote on the agenda. Sorry there, Councilor Gruhl?
Sorry, it's Drew.
Grew? Thank you.
No, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry, I'm having some pretty severe technical difficulties, and I promised I made sure I was ready to go before this. Is it possible I can just get the session ID? My Slack is just not cooperating.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I will read it out just so everybody has
Thank you, I'm very
access.
sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. We'll make sure you're able to access everything. Okay, wonderful. So the ID, if anybody needs it as well on the Zoom, is 755735. Let me know if you need that again, Counselor.
Seven five five
755735. Perfect. That motion carries. We will move on now to the approval of the previous minutes. Looking for a mover. Councillor Dunn. Looking for a seconder. I see President Shaw. Are there any questions to the previous minutes? Are there any amendments to the previous minutes? Is there any debate about the previous minutes? And are there any objections about the previous minutes? Seeing none, I would again invite council to proceed to Echo 360 to vote. Perfect. The motion carries. We'll now move into comments from the chair. So first, I want to welcome you all to the first USC meeting of the year. Really hope that you've enjoyed your time at this retreat weekend. It's been a pleasure to get to know all of you over the course of this weekend, and I hope you're looking forward to your terms on council. Just a couple points from me, just a couple housekeeping items for today. Firstly, after this retreat, I will be sending around a form to councilors via email to volunteer to deliver the land acknowledgements for this upcoming year. Please be advised that if you want to volunteer to deliver the land acknowledgements, obviously wanting to share some of the opportunity with council here, but be advised that you'll have to submit something to both myself and Michaela at least 24 hours before the meeting, just so that we can make sure that everything's all clear. As well, after the retreat, there will be a feedback form sent around just for you to kind of fill out some stuff about the experience you've had at retreat, what you enjoyed, what perhaps maybe you didn't enjoy, so that we can use that to gauge some future training opportunities for you. So keep an eye on your email for that. Also, I wanted to say that depending on the result of motion 5, there may need to be another form sent around to readjust some priorities on the standing committees, but that will be sent out immediately following this meeting, so please keep an eye on your email again for that. As well, I would advise that we do have a for election section of this agenda today, the service review committees that we just amended, but be advised to councilors that councilors who nominate themselves will have 2 minutes to speak to their potential candidacy, followed by a 2-minute period for questions and answers. When you nominate, myself and Michaela will sort of assemble a speakers list for you, call you up to the podium one by one, and then your time will begin to be able to speak to council about why you want to be nominated to the service review committees. As well, a reminder for council that the call for agenda items period for the August council general meeting is open from now until July 29th at 11:59 p.m. A reminder that you should fill out the motion package that was attached to that email, but if you ever need it, please feel free to reach out to myself. And send whatever filled motion that you have to myself, Michaela, and Maya before the deadline closes, and more information can be found in the email that I sent to council on July 24th. Also, lastly, just a couple housekeeping items. I know that we've been through this, but please be advised that there are live mics and recording in the room. Make sure you're turning them off if you're not speaking, as they will pick up sort of what you're saying. As well, during the consideration of each report and motion, there will be a designated time to ask questions, so please ask questions during the designated time. And as well, some of you may have the agenda document open right now. Please try to refrain from adding any additional comments to that, as we'll be live editing it, myself, Dane, and Michaela. Perfect. We'll now move into the presentations for this meeting. We'll start off with the exec reports, and I will invite President Shaw up to deliver his report to council.
Point of order. Thought the board chair meeting was first, but the board chair report was first on the agenda. No, I rescind.
Okay. Thank you, President Shaw. I will pull up the slides here for you. Just before we get started, councilors on Zoom, are you able to see the council executive reports presentation? Just by a show of thumbs up. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. President Shaw, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me all right, and for those joining in online as well. I was just speaking to my team that it's kind of weird sitting on the other side of the table. I used to sit where Maria used to sit last year, so now it feels weird being on the other side of the table and having to be locked in for the council meetings now. But yeah, I'm very excited today to do our first executive report of the 26-27 council cycle. We switched up a bit. I just want to preface by saying that we switched up a bit of the way we do exec reports. We want to show the outcomes of the things we've been working on, some upcoming news, and also the outputs of what the USC has delivered to you as well. So if you recognize, or if anyone of you were ever been at a council meeting last year, you might have seen some different layouts, but this is the one that we're going to try this year as well. Okay, so starting off, my hot take is that I think the spoke breakfast sandwich is one of the best values breakfasts you can get. And I'm not saying that because I work at the USC. I'm saying that because I generally almost get it every single day, and it's like $4, and that has kept me up and energized, ready to go for many long days. Outcomes. This is a consistent theme for everyone here. We've successfully transitioned Team 61 of the USC. This year's transition was a bit of a newer process where the staff and the senior management of the USC focused a lot more extensively on some of the background, some of the procedures, workflows, and operations of the USC. One specifically memorable day was when each department took us around and introduced us to all their staff and gave us something special about the departments. So for food and beverage, the food and beverage team, we made flatbreads and mocktails in the wave. And then for the productions team, they actually took us to like literally shoot some pyrotechnics. Sorry, we did not shoot pyrotechnics. We make the fake smoke machine, and so some of the glitter machine as well in the Mustang Lounge. So we got to play around with that, and then there's some screen setup, which is really cool. So that was probably a highlight of the transition for me personally. Some upcoming stuff. So very excited to announce, and I know this has been a very consistent topic for a lot of counselors and just council and USC adjacent people. There is a new USC app under development. It's going to be an all-inclusive app that is going to be launched in stages for various trial periods. And this is being developed by a Canadian company as well that the USC is working extensively with to capture all of the services and to eventually roll all the USC apps into one app. there's a term that we're using a lot in the USC recently. It's called API for any of our computer science or engineering people. I'm sure you're very familiar with this term, but that is how technologically we're going to plan to integrate a lot of services onto this app. Some exciting stuff that this app could see is stuff like, for example, Spoke reward points, so I can get more rewards from all the breakfast sandwiches that I eat every day, but lots of cool functionality coming to that as well. I cannot provide much details at this moment, but I will continue giving updates to council throughout the year for this app's development. Second, we have mapped out, and this sounds like a very small update, but for us, I actually really appreciate this because we worked extensively for events and comms team to map out our events for the year. We have a running Google Sheets document right now of all our portfolios, as well as some of the staff-led events as well. So things, for example, like the Wave Super Bowl night or Spoke Trivia, things like that, along with all our executive-driven programming in the Atrium, in the Mustang Lounge, in the community room. All that has been roughly mapped out over the year as well, so we can coordinate appropriately with various stakeholders like Western, if you want to do fairs and events, but also with maybe some of your faculty councils as well down the line. And finally, on my end, some faculty council president meetings. I'm really happy, as many of you know, I come from a faculty president background. Last year, I served as the Faculty of Health Sciences Students Council president. And for just a quick background to everyone, faculty councils exist as autonomous bodies under their dean's office and not strictly tied into the USC. The USC and Faculty Council share some connections through a USC bank account, as well as, for example, the counselors that sit on the USC Council, as well as the respective faculty councils council as well. So I've started the process very early on this year to connect with the faculty presidents with a special emphasis on our professional schools, being medicine, dentistry, and law as well, to really touch base and make it clear about USC expectations and how we can work together in a year. Really want to focus on engagement as well as understanding of the financial systems that we operate under, so that faculty presidents who lead their faculty councils to do a lot of great work for their respective student bodies feel empowered and ready to take on the school year as well. And I'm very happy to kind of wrap that up, and I'm still missing just a couple of presidents to end that with as well. For outputs, you might have seen some exciting stuff down at the Spoke. We have a new point of sale system. And again, this is something that I don't know how many of you are really excited about, but I was really nerding out over this when I was looped in on this. Essentially what this means was that the Spoke and Wave used to run on very different POS systems, and lots of different softwares, things didn't collect together. We all have to pay separate monies for all those separate softwares as well. Then came an opportunity to have everything integrated into one POS system called Toast. And so if you ever go to the Wave, you will see that there's new handheld orderings for the Wave servers. There's new functionality on how to split bills. There's the new kiosk machines that you will see downstairs that will hopefully alleviate some of the long lines we see during the school year and during the O week, as well as this can be successfully future integrated into our USC app via API as well, so you can get things like the Spoke rewards and all fun things of that sorts as well. With our kiosk ordering lines, rest assured that we are not seeing any changes to our shift schedules and with less employees. The goal is that with less employees focused on actually taking the orders, there can be better, and F&B is already working on this already, there can be better workflows to the operations of the actual food establishment to make sure that students can get their food faster and more efficiently as well. Finally, I guess later, I will also talk about the 2026-2027 executive roadmap. Now, for those who have taken a look at the executive roadmap, you might not know, but it is actually a bit different from previous years. It's a lot shorter than previous years because this year we really decided to go with a thematic approach to how Team 61 wants to conduct their USC year. The USC roadmap is meant to be a guiding document, not a thing that's down to the specific minute detail about how our team wants to do, and really kind of doubling down on what Melissa, Dane, and the speaker, Braden, said yesterday about giving flexibility to the USC executive team, but also offering some sort of priorities for the team of how they want to conduct their advocacy, their programming, and their initiatives for the year as well. So happy to go more into that afterwards, but this concludes my first ever executive report, and I can take questions now.
Are there any questions for President Shaw at this time? Seeing none, thank you, President Shaw.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. I will now invite Vice President Sukija up to deliver her report.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Good morning. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to start this year, and thank you all for being here on a Sunday morning. I'm going to keep this quick and short. So, as Steve mentioned, we've successfully transitioned into the VP position. For those of you who don't know, I was an AVP for the same position last year, and the transition was quite smooth, and I was able to learn a lot of new things from my predecessor. Some of the things I do want to bring your attention to would be the exam integrity working group, the university budget submission, as well as meeting with the executive director for Western International College. So this year, Susan Lewis, who's the Vice Provost Academic, invited students as well as certain faculty members, deans, to sit on an exam integrity working group, essentially to discuss certain strategies that can be used in the upcoming December exams to reduce like exam cheating and things like that. Currently, we've had 2 meetings so far to discuss certain strategies, and as a student representative, my job on the working group has been to make sure that the measures that are being taken are not punitive, and that we're working in collaboration in order to ensure that the strategies work for the students and not against them, as well as reducing stress around a time that is already stressful, which is the December exams. The university budget submission is something that the university affairs portfolio does every year. So it is to help like the university understand where we want to see certain investments and increase in funds in their operating and capital budgets. This year we've taken a process where we're doing budget consultations with different portfolios around campus, including student groups, so faculty councils and their VP academic and advocacy positions. We annually do a VP academic and advocacy roundtable, and we're taking the opportunity of using those roundtables to get more feedback from students and what they want to see. Meeting with the executive director, her name's Larissa from Western International College, came from this idea that going into this role, we wanted to ensure that the students coming at Western International College, that is now with us, are not students with an asterisk, and we are integrating them into the Western student experience as much as possible. So we've met with them to understand their plans to integrate how students on campus will receive the same student experience, as well as how we're going to ensure that these students receive the USC services and access to these services programming as well. And then we've done the portfolio hiring. I now have 2 coordinators and my AVP all hired. My AVP has started work in the summer, while my coordinators, who will largely be looking over the programming this year, will start in September. Then programming as well as events, fairs, and planning for that has also begun. We're not changing anything from last year, so we're bringing back things like the harm reduction fair, mental health fair as well. And then we've been gathering certain information from Western annual reports that were brought forward at the Board of Governors meeting. Specifically the mental health report, given that the USC mental health position paper is up for review this year, we wanted to understand what has been sort of the statistics from the university side over the past few years. Coming into this role, we also wanted to streamline some of our advocacy efforts, and that's why this year we've identified certain advocacy priorities that we really want to focus on, mainly being affordability and student well-being, specifically preventive. And those are certain things that we really want to direct our attention to. My hot take is that the outfits matter more than the event itself. Yeah, thank you. I'll take questions now.
Are there any questions at this time? Councilor Antonelli.
I'm not sure if this was answered before, but I'm wondering how exactly students, like undergraduate students at the Western International College, would fit with the University Student Council.
How they would fit? I think more so, like, we want to ensure that they know about the University Student Council, as well as the fact that there are services and programming, and like these different things that we run, and they have the same access to those things rather than them not knowing at all what we like, who we are and what we do. So like right now, all of our efforts are in making sure that those students are well aware of the things that we do.
Would they have access to things like Purple Care and like the health and dental plan?
I believe so, but I can confirm and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? Perfect. Seeing none, thank you, Vice President
Thank you.
Sajid. I will now invite Vice President Tatizian up to deliver his report to Council.
Hello, hello. Like Sabrina and Steve, I've also successfully transitioned into my Vice President External Affair role, which is very excited. I'm very excited to start working and really get the year started. I'm excited for everyone to come back to campus and make campus feel alive again. I've been very busy recently, attending both CASA and USA conferences. For CASA, I attended Foundations, which is where they really set the foundations for the year amongst each other, and then Policy and Strategy, where they set the priorities for the year. For the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, I attended the retreat where we voted on the executive committee, and then also decided what committees we will be a part of as members of the steering committee. And I decided that I'm going to be a part of the government and organizational strategy committee. In regard to stakeholder meetings, I've had a couple so far with numerous MPs, MPPs, and municipal leaders, both local and in Ottawa and Toronto. Coming up next, I am starting to work on a Get Out the Vote campaign ahead of the municipal election. I'm excited to work with everyone on that. It's in collaboration with multiple different stakeholders on campus, including Western Housing, and then also working on 2 fairs, including the transportation fair, which will be in collaboration with off-campus Western Safety and Special Constables. And then for the housing fair, we will be working directly with Western Housing. Yeah, that's basically everything I wanted to get through today. Also working on a student impact report that's upcoming, actually. That's hopefully going to be in collaboration with Downtown London and the City of London Chamber of Commerce. And my hot take is very inspired by my upcoming Get Out the Vote campaign, which is that you should vote in municipal elections because those are the decisions that are going to affect your everyday life. The sidewalks you walk on, the roads you drive on, the buses, everything. So vote, get out and vote, and tell all the students that you represent as well, because it's very important. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Are there any questions at this time? Councilor Antonelli?
100% agree with the hot take. This isn't in your executive report, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask about it. But are we going to continue the advocacy for the OSAP changes that occurred recently earlier this year?
Yeah, so we're still working currently on our provincial strategy and the way we're going to go about it. Definitely on the education front, and also continuing to make sure that we're advocating for equitable access to post-secondary education. It's definitely top of mind.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Are there other questions at this time? Perfect. Seeing none, thank you, Vice President Tatizian.
Thank you, everyone.
I now invite Vice President Huck up to deliver her report to Council.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. As the rest of my executive team has already said, I have successfully transitioned into my role. That's what the past couple months has mainly been about. For me, that's looked a lot like diving right into a week planning, as well as developing lots of strong relationships with Western admin that I'm working with for this planning. So starting with what's upcoming, I'm already in the process of developing year-long programming, so I'm super open to ideas if anyone has feedback on that front. I'm also hoping to work a lot with VPSC, so Azad, to make sure that I am capturing what students want to see when it comes to that programming. and executing events that students actually want to attend. And then I'm also working really hard on improving the soft self-care resources for OUT Week. So that looks like working with LSTs to support their programming and make sure that it's actually reflecting what their first years want to see. And then also hoping to develop a more streamlined communication system for softs during OUT Week. That's been an issue in the past, and we're working really hard at improving it, making sure softs know where to be and where they can get the most up-to-date information about OUT Week throughout the week. And then also very exciting, the USC has partnered with Backyard Fest, as most of you have probably seen. This is kind of similar to Rock the Runway last year, but we're involved kind of in a different way this year. What's exciting though is that we were still able to get some exclusive discounted tickets for our students, so we're super excited to be doing that. And then much more to come. Yeah, we're going to be planning lots of exciting programming for the year ahead. As Steve mentioned, we've already kind of mapped out what that will look like. And yeah, my hot take is that I don't like carbonated drinks. And if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions at this time? Check Zoom as well. Okay. Perfect. Seeing none. Thank you, Vice President Hunt. Wonderful. I will now invite Vice President Manawala to deliver her report. Are you able to see us on the Zoom, Vice President?
Yes, hi. I'm so sorry, everyone. I just got back to London. I'm on my way to campus, so unfortunately, I just have to do this virtually. But are you all able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so I can start with my hot take. I do believe that cereal is a soup. Might be a bit controversial. As everyone else, I've also successfully transitioned into my vice president position. Everything's going great so far. And for me, upcoming are the service reviews. So as President Shaw earlier mentioned, I have about 4 services under review. And so then following that, I'm also working currently on a services rebrand. So just fixing visually the aesthetics of a lot of the logos of my portfolios, making sure that they fit a little bit better into what the service represents. And we've also currently just signed a new MOU for our student refugee program that we run. We take a annual student ancillary fee from everyone, and that will be reflected in a new upcoming student this August. So currently, in terms of outputs, I just completed the REACH conference in May. We had over 200 delegates from London and Middlesex arrive. There were a lot of great leadership opportunities for students where they got to run programming and teach 7th and 8th graders a lot about financial aspects, high school, planning for university, things like that. I'm also currently actively working on changes to the peer support center, ensuring that it is a bit more of a safe space, adding more accessibility protocols such as QR codes, online booking services, etc. In September, we will be beginning our student assistance program, so SAP, which will be a 24/7 virtual mental health support crisis. So this is during the weekdays, weekends, anyone can go in person or online to receive crisis support from professionals around London. And it's meant to be sort of a pilot program starting in September to see how it works out, logistics, things like that. But we're very excited to start working on this program. So that's everything for me. Thank you.
Are there any questions at this time? Just check the Zoom there again. So not seeing any. Thank you, Vice President Manawala. And lastly, I will invite Vice President Gill up to deliver his report to Council.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name's Azad. Very nice to re-meet you all today. So to kind of get started, I will echo every other executive that has gone and say that I have successfully transitioned into my position. Kind of echoing President Shaw, I would say that our transition was different than what I've heard from previous years, and I'm really excited that we got the amount of time that we did to really properly transition into our roles to be as prepared as possible for the upcoming year. In terms of upcoming events, programming, initiatives, one thing that I'm really focused on right now is expanding our USC in the Wild initiative to really incorporate a lot of other facets of the USC into one kind of program. So if you guys don't know, Hype Team is a big part of our advertising and marketing campaigns, and so figuring out how to properly utilize the Hype Team in addition to the community engagement portfolio as well to ensure that our messaging is heard by students, as well as allowing for that two-way communication to collect feedback as well. We also want to expand USC in the Wild to the executive as well, so having the executive participate out on campus, being available and easy and accessible to students, as well as hoping to engage council in that as well by having council partner with the Hype Team, partner with the community engagement coordinators to go out, collect feedback, and discuss with your constituents. So excited to talk about that a little bit more as the year progresses, but that is one big thing that I want to do this year. We're also mapping out our engagement tactics for the year. So with every incoming group of students, their wants and needs change. And so the way that we can reach them will also change. And so trying to best figure out how we as the USC can better understand our students as well as reach them and share our information with them is something that is paramount to my role at this time. Next is Global Village event planning. So Vice President Huck gets the glory of planning orientation week, but I get a small little piece of that in the Global Village event. So currently looking right now to figure out how to make that event more engaging for our first year students and softs alike to ensure that it is a memorable and marquee event of OE. In terms of outputs, we did our first ever USC affiliate retreat. So we got to work with the affiliate executives a little bit earlier on in the year than I believe has happened in years prior. And we did that to focus on increasing collaboration throughout the year. So we had our lovely affiliate executives come in to actually this building. We hung out for a little bit, got to talk about their plans and priorities for the year in addition to ours, and figure out more ways that we can work together for the year. We were able to do a lot of Pride celebrations. So if you didn't know, Pride in London is actually celebrated in July instead of June, like most other constituencies. And so we were able to do the Pride on the Beach event. That is something that happens out on on Concrete Beach. And we were able to collaborate with Western EDI and host that event for the general campus community. We also participated in the London Pride Parade a couple of weekends ago, and were able to represent students, and we did an open call to students to participate with us in that walk. In terms of portfolio hiring, there is an update that I'd like to share with you all. This year, an Indigenous Relations Coordinator was not hired due to a low applicant pool, and therefore to ensure that the funds that were approved by a previous council for student positions remained so, we increased the community engagement portfolio by one coordinator. So that position kind of shifted for this year. In terms of the Indigenous Relations Coordinator, we're going to assess this position and the role this year. That is one of my mandates for the year. To ensure that the scope and the role, the scope and responsibilities of the role are fitting of a coordinator position. So that is an internal review process that I will be conducting, and I will bring findings and recommendations to council as part of the 2027-28 executive budget presentation. And then finally, we were able to participate in Western Lunch. So that is a program run by Western where incoming first year students come to Western for, I believe, the weekend. So we were able to meet with a lot of incoming first years over the last couple of weeks and teach them more about the USC, get to know them, and also do something pretty exciting, which is collect their feedback. So we have a program called O Week Insider where we basically have a list of first years that have signed up to kind of tell us what they want to see at their orientation week before it happens. We've noticed that in previous years, everyone's able to give feedback after they do orientation week, and they don't really get a chance to plan their orientation week because by the time we get to speak to them, they're finished. So this is a pretty cool initiative that was set up by our predecessors, and then so I'm excited to continue that on. I'm happy to take questions.
Are there
Oh,
any,
sorry. My hot take is that a Caesar is just cold soup. So I guess a lot of soup hot takes today.
are there any questions for Vice President Gill at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Vice President Gill. Ooh, are you okay? No, you're
It's like when you cross the stage and they say don't sweat.
Perfect. I will now re-invite President Shaw up to deliver the 2026-2027 executive roadmap to Council. Again, be advised there will be a period for questions after the presentation, so hold any questions until then.
Okay, hi again, everyone. I'll try to make this. All right, I guess I have to click on this. I'll try to make this somewhat clear and consistent in respects to everyone's time, as I note that I only have 15 minutes allocated to it. There's also a part 2, which is a budget presentation in this. I guess we'll just do them together. I didn't want to amend the agenda to reflect a very small change as well. So this will be executive roadmap and a very quick look into a bit of the budgetary process behind the USC's executive budget. Okay, starting off 26-27 executive roadmap. As I have stated earlier, this year looks a bit different than what we did in previous years. For context, for our new counselors here, at this time last year at the council retreat, last year's executive team delivered 4 pages worth of projects that they were working on under 4 separate themes as well. And that was covered basically a restatement of the presidential platform that the last year's executive team operated under. This year we just decided that although that was a good, more specific look, it was a bit too specific, so that some elements of the programming would not be able to be delivered on time or in different fashions as well. So taking that consideration back, we decided to kind of scale it back and focus on the thematic approaches similar to what last year's executive team presented as well. With that, I want to reiterate that this year's executive roadmap and the themes for our year includes number 1, your voice on and beyond campus. Number 2, putting the U in USC. Number 3, innovating the student experience. And number 4, service and resource innovation. So quickly diving into each one, starting off with your voice on and beyond campus. Echoing kind of the ideas that we learned yesterday about how the USC conducts its advocacy on a advocacy versus an activist lens. Right now is an especially important time for us to be kind of the biggest, the most respected student voices in the room, and this is why we decided to go with this theme. What it means, and kind of reiterating what was said yesterday, was that we want to be, we want to sound educated, we want to sound informed, and we want to sound connected with the student body as we deliver our recommendations for various advocacy goals throughout this year on a local, so school level, a municipal, a provincial, and a federal level as well. As Stefan alluded to previously earlier, we have been very busy on the provincial and the federal end, attending various conferences and meeting with various stakeholders in the provincial and federal government. And just kind of add on to what Stefan said right there might have been an acronym that counselors might not have heard of, which is CASA, the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. This year we have joined CASA as an observing member to strengthen our federal advocacy as part of a coalition more, with no increased cost to USC per student for student costs, and we pay an administrative fee to attend the conferences itself. So so relationship setting with campus stakeholders, that is more of Sabrine's portfolio in our executive report. I think she goes into detail about more of which of the specific stakeholders she has met. And so far, just to reiterate or just to repeat for anyone who hasn't read it, we've met with various stakeholders, including the president, the provost, various vice president academics, and a whole list of other stakeholders at Western. Municipal impact, kind of Stefan was talking about as well. This is a very crucial year for not just for London, but for all municipalities across our province as well when it comes to voting. I don't know if anyone's keeping up with the municipal elections today, with the amount of councilors that are running, with the mayoral candidates, but this is once in 4-year opportunity for student voices to be heard. And right now we are fielding, the USC executive team is fielding some council requests from interested councilors and mayoral candidates for their candidacy as well. And we'll be sure to communicate our student interests to them as well and incorporate that into our Get Out the Vote campaign. What else do I have on here? Finally, yeah, so independent plus coalition advocacy on the federal level. That's just kind of reiterating what I said about CAS as well. So again, you can see these are things that we don't have a minute-to-minute set strategy for. These are things I've just been working on. In last year's professional roadmap, there would have been more specific things that may or may not have happened. So this is why the power of using these themes to guide our approach is very important to us this year. Moving forwards, I realized I talked about the food operation kiosks and the USC apps already. But the idea of service and resource innovation comes from the feedback we hear from students, right? The USC is such a large establishment, such a large institution. Year after year, there are a lot of similar topics that come up. I'm sure the USC app is something that everyone here has heard of in their undergraduate career when it comes time to election seasons. And I was very happy to find out a couple of days into my term updated about the development of such an app, the rough timelines of it, and that I think is a very great way to showcase the innovation of the USC. Similarly to the food kiosk as well, every O Week we see just lines and lines and lines of various students at O Week during the school year. Every single day at like 12 o'clock, there's always a line that stretches out to the atrium for the spoke, and this really comes at a great time, an opportunity for innovation as well with just our operational side of our F&B businesses, and at the same time this improves the student experience by making sure that you get a better experience at the F&B operation, you get a shorter wait time, and you can get your food faster as well. Club systems improvements, I'll quickly touch on about this. Vice President Maniwala will probably touch more about this on future exec meetings as well, but we're also looking at how can we make our club system more efficient in terms of their event bookings, their catering requests, and stuff like that as well. And she has put in a lot of work this year to make sure that clubs are getting the support they need so that they can support the student bodies that call the clubs their home. You in the USC. This was a campaign that was originally started back in the 1980s and 90s of the USC. And to me and my team, the take is that all of us students have a bigger stake in the USC than we realize, right? Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you directly vote for the next president and some of the executive teams of the USC. Your purchasing trends directly influence the type of menu items that we see. Your voice matters and our advocacy matters, and that's why I think you, right, the focus is on you and your power in the USC. And that extends to number one, I'll talk about the ancillary fees, and this is something I'll touch on more later in the budget part of this presentation, but the ancillary fees, everyone here pays the exact same ancillary fees. And with that, you have access to the same host of services that the USC offers to you, right? However, when we ask very specific questions, do you know what you're paying towards? Do you know what this fee goes towards? Most people will probably only be able to tell you, I know about the health and dental insurance, the bus pass, and maybe a couple more other things, right? With this idea that everyone pays the same ancillary fees, the one goal of us as an executive team this year is to make sure that you feel empowered to know about all the services and fees that you pay into, and not just you, but your constituents as well for that matter, because you're all leaders on this campus, and we believe that student transparency among student fees is a very important initiative for us to focus on, both for students, but as a form of provincial advocacy as well, to show that we are leading in this area. Another way of you in the USC, when we do a lot of advocacy fairs, right? The University Affairs and External Affairs does a lot of advocacy fairs in the past couple of years, focused on transportation, housing, tenant rights, etc. They have been shifted more to a bit of a programming role where we don't have a real output at the end of these advocacy fairs. So this year, myself, Vice President Sukija, and Vice President Titizian are really focused on bringing an aspect of a focus or a recommendation that we can get out of our advocacy fairs. And that's when your participation comes in, right? The way that you direct your students, the way you bring your students' concerns to us, the way your students come to us directly for these advocacy fairs, that's more of a everyday student stake in the USC too. And finally, faculty council engagement. Again, touching on the fact that faculty councils do such great work for their respective student bodies. In the past, there has been a bit of a disconnect with the faculty councils and the USC due to a lack of, not to a lack, but due to maybe some blurring of the lines, some miscommunication. And this year, I am very intentionally making clear about the relationship between faculty councils and the USC and how we can best work together to support all the students on our campus. Okay, finally, student experience. This is the fun one. Yeah, so O Week, Vice President Huck is hard at work every single day. Please go up to her after and like ask her how hard she's been at work, because every day I see her, she's working, and I think, you know what, let's give her a round of applause for that first. For the softs in this room, this O Week promises to deliver a great experience both in terms of the student side of things, but also for your side of things as well as a student leader. So we want to really support you in various ways around finding better ways for transportation, mental health support, food, etc. So that's just something being worked on, and it's what the VPOP Pro is for. Next is Purple Fest weekend. I won't dive too much into details about here, but we're designing a multi-day event, one of them being the Backyard Fest at the London Airport. Vice President Huck will give an update at future council meetings as well about all the exciting initiatives that she's been working on. And this is really meant to be a way for all Western students to come out and celebrate between the festivities of O Week and the homecoming weekend as well. So that is when it will be situated. And finally, I also won't go into too much details around this, but Vice President Gill and I and Vice President Huck are working on very innovative engagement tactics that we want to bring to the USC as well, to really make students understand what their stake is here at the USC as a very, I also won't say it right now. I'll say it at a future meeting. But just really fun ways to get the USC brand imaging out there as well, and in a fun and also, I guess, some cost-saving ways as well. Okay, so that being said, this is the end of the executive roadmap. I do have a printed copy on me if anyone wants to take a quick look. Very excited to kind of work on these themes for the year, as I believe that our work is going to be focused under these 4 buckets. And yeah, that's it from me. I guess I can take questions now about the roadmap itself.
Are there any questions about the executive roadmap for President Shaw? Councillor Suleiman? Sorry, Councillor, if you could speak into the mic.
Thank you, Steve, for going over the priorities for the USC. I guess, like, however, which is understandable. However, like, that had just
Right. So if I can restate the question, you're asking, could there be a way for this roadmap or future roadmaps to integrate the priorities and goals of all the executive teams? Yeah. Great. Great, so thank you for that question. So for executive platforms, basically, the presidential mandate is really the only guiding mandate of the USC as an organization, because they're the ones who are elected by the student body at large. Now, while the Vice President of External Affairs and the Vice President of University Affairs run with their own mandate in terms of a counselor role as well, the mandate is on a very technical basis considered through the executive team for implementation as well, and that doesn't hold as much as a mandate as the presidential mandate. Whereas for the rest of the executive teams, for the Vice President of Orientation and Programming, for the Vice President of Student Services, and for the Vice President of Student Engagement, they are all hired roles, which means that their mandate and their ideas comes from a hiring process, and process which includes a board member, a counselor, and also full-time staff as well. So their ideas are very much worked and in collaboration with the president to be presented together for the year. Now, in the past, that is also kind of what last year's executive team did. They took the presidential platform, they added some tweaks into it with the knowledge that they possessed, and then it got all of the execs' opinions into it at the same time. And that is certainly something that the next USC executive team could take on to do as well. And that is something I do not have control over, but at this year's time, we've decided to go with a more thematic approach. Now, I just also want to assure counselors that the fact that, you know, there you can see very specific things. We will be circling back to the individual platform points that the student body voted on through the presidential platform. You're free to ask about a platform point at any point in time, and the execs and I will be periodically giving updates on those through our executive reports as well. And we just might not make a mention that, you know, this was a presidential platform item. But yeah, welcome at council meetings to, or just through an email as well, for you to inquire about the state of any of our platform points.
Are there other questions for President Shaw at this time? Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I do appreciate the approach to a thematic standpoint. But with thematic standpoints, I do agree with Councillor Suleiman's approach with accountability, or concern with accountability. I know that it is our job as councillors to maintain accountability here, but without constituents having information on what we're holding accountability to, it does seem like we are kind of laying out a very broad category of things that we could be held accountable to, but we're not having any specificity towards that. So what is your kind of, I'd say, standpoint on how we're going to hold this executive roadmap to accountable?
Great, thank you, Councillor Dunn. So again, I'll state that this is by no means, and the presidential platform was the elected mandate of the USC, and the USC executives are doing everything in their power to present those points back to the student body. I want to dive into a bit of our future planning as well in terms of student engagement and accountability around our executive, our presidential platform and roadmap. This year, we're trying to revitalize some of the events we do throughout the year, and this goes back to actually one of the platform points itself on quarterly USC updates. We're gonna find exciting ways to deliver, you know, student forward-facing platform points with student wins back to the student body, and so we want to change something. So maybe I'll speak to this, and maybe Vice President Gill can add on if needed. For example, the USC does a correspondence dinner every single year, which is usually at the second semester. We're potentially thinking of turning that more into a USC execs like platform review or accountability roadmap as well. Sorry, accountability checkpoint for all student leaders to ask questions and to, I guess, assess the timelines of our accomplishments. And when I say quarterly as well, right, I want to do these in various forms. Vice President Gill and I were thinking of sometime in September when we can do a launch to student leaders, as well as a update on some of the themes and the platform points we're working on in the summer. We're thinking of a USC Voices issue sometime as well as under quarterly update. So we're really trying to deliver the platform points in different formats and mediums throughout the year, and to make sure that student leaders and counselors have a good understanding of the platform points that are being worked on.
Are there other questions for President Shaw? Perfect. Before I invite you to speak again, Councillor Suleiman, I just want to make sure that everybody has had a chance to speak, so just want to look at the Zoom as well. Seeing nothing there, go ahead, Councillor Suleiman.
Oh, sorry, this is just a quick question. So I'm assuming the document is like completely finalized, so there's no opportunity for like review or like an expansion of sorts if the, I guess, like if the GA proposes it, like this is a finalized document.
So no, this is what council is voting on. Should there be amendments to the executive roadmap, that is a amendment that can be raised by council members, and if voted yes, will be brought back to the executive team for work.
Any other questions? Councillor Dunn?
Again, I do appreciate the act of having accountable measures put in place going forward, but I do just have a concern with the idea of not having a broad, like, in terms of the roadmap, not having things that are set in stone for us to be held accountable to. I have read the pillars, and I do think the pillars they do cover a lot of subjects, but they don't cover what we could be held accountable in the sense of saying, you said you were going to do this, or in that kind of way. And so if students don't have that kind of set in stone idealization of what we're going to be doing, how do we be held accountable in those accountability measures going forward with accountable feedback or anything of that measure? So I'm just wondering, is there a certain way that we could have some kind of set out things in this roadmap for us to be able to be held accountable for going into the checkpoints that you mentioned about accountable checkpoints?
Yeah, again, I want to reiterate the fact that we want to kind of shift the idea of what is the USC responsible to the ideas of what students voted for in the presidential elections as well. And with that being said, again, it's like counselors and student leaders, or any students for that matter, are more than welcome to ask me and my executive team about the progress we made on certain platform points. Now, will some of the platform points not be applicable? Yes. And will we highlight those at council meetings of why they don't quite work out? Of course we will. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for the executives to update any interested students about any of our platform points as well. Should counselors decide that they want to include another sort of accountability measure in the executive roadmap as well, be more than welcome to hear what that would look like, but just understanding that that would take an extended period of time, not extended, an additional period of time for the executive and staff to work on, which could possibly delay us, make our goals less focused for a year as we kind of round up this summer planning period.
I will take this as a final opportunity for questions to the executive roadmap. Councilor Group?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would just say is, if we have some members who are concerned about what things look like, and I understand Councilor Shaw, or President Shaw, sorry, your concerns regarding delaying things, do you foresee sort of any sort of middle ground where you'd be able to proceed unimpeded, but perhaps later on introduce something to kind of satisfy people's concerns regarding accountability? Because I totally understand what you're saying about not wanting to be, kind of stopping the ball before it really even gets rolling, I guess.
Right. Thanks for the question, Councilor Grew. I think the intended measure for the accountability comes from our planned updates both in council and our planned special events for a year that reflects on the the roadmap itself, right? When I think of accountability regarding this roadmap specifically, when I give an update about a certain initiative or plan that I did or any of my executives did, I plan to link it back to this roadmap, which, why is it sticky? Which theme it falls under, but also which platform point it also falls under as well, right? So that's kind of the way that I intended to go about this originally. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, President Shaw. I believe you're moving right into the executive budget report, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you everyone. Moving forwards, this is a very quick budget presentation. So I do want to preface by saying to everyone that this is not the full budget presentation. You will be hearing this come the second semester time as well, when counselors need to do their duty to approve the ancillary fee schedule as well. This presentation was added in with some feedback from last year's counselors as well as staff support to get counselors really not really understanding, but sorry, I have a bit of a burp here. To give counselors a better sense of the ancillary fees that we talked about earlier, and also just a better financial understanding of the USC to all counselors in this meeting today. So you guys can start by seeing that we have 3 main budget themes. Now these are the words that were approved by last year's council. So to my understanding, these words were came up with by last year's executive team, and then subsequently approved by last year's council as well, with a focus on impact, transparency, and sustainability. This slide itself, I do apologize if there's any difficulty in seeing the screen, but I'll try to make this a very quick process as well, because as you can see, council falls in only a certain area of the budgetary process. So essentially, the executives, the budget that you will all be seeing that will be going for approval today is based off of last year's executive spending. Now, if you do up the math, and I think that there is a sheet on that form that shows the math as well, the executive budget of the USC lies around $1.3 million a year. And the best way that I love to explain this is that the money that is most controllable by the USC execs to perform their initiatives and programming is about $1.3 million a year. Now, of course, a lot of that is tied into salary as well. So if any interested counselors can do the math to figure out how much of that 1.3 million actually goes into the salary too. So basically, the USC executives, along with staff support, as well as review of last year's budget and some consultations as needed with staff, dictate the numbers that they want to shift around in their executive budget based off of last year's spending. This has been, and we are able to see past trends as well in spending, so that we know that what last year's goals were, what our goals are, and how we can balance out these numbers. Along with the budgets too, I do have to note that the budgetary lines of each of the exec spending lines can be moved and adjusted at free will. It's just that the bottom numbers cannot be adjusted. So kind of going back to what Vice President Gill was saying earlier, for example, because we did not hire a Indigenous coordinator this year because of low application pool, that money cannot be put into programming because it was a salary line, and therefore a new student engagement coordinator is hired to fulfill that salary line as well. So basically, the USC staff and executives come up with the executive budget for the year. The board of directors, the USC board of directors, to clarify there, kind of reviewed the corporate budget side of things. So as we know, the USC is a very large corporation. It has an operational budget of around $13-14 million a year. Most of it is collected from student fees as well. And then there goes for a lot of the corporate side of the organization. So that is something that council does not have the jurisdiction to look at. That's more of a board jurisdiction. The USC General Counsel then looks at our executive budget for review. That is also when ancillary fee increases are discussed. So additional increases to ancillary fees if be based off of certain events that are going on our campus. If there's an increase in service fees, what that means, how it came to be. So this will be the themes that we'll be looking at more so in second semester, and that will be a larger process around that of why certain fees need to be increased. And finally, when council, the USC council, approves the budget from the USC, when I say the budget, really just the fee bill, that then goes to the university board of governors for their approval as well. If you could remember yesterday for how the fees worked, essentially, Western collects all student fees, and Western then deposits the fees to the USC at set amount of times during the year. So that is why their board of governors is involved in that process as well. So that's a very quick overview of the USC budget process. And again, this will be explained in much greater detail come second semester as well. So very quick look, and I apologize because there's no good way to fit this graph into showing everything height-wise without blowing up the numbers. But you can see here that the total ancillary fees for fiscal year 27 is around $1,170. Now, these are the fees that the USC collects. If you go on look on your fee bill, there's a bit more fees that Western collects as well, but these are the ones that the USC collects. The majority, the 1170, is tied into the health and dental insurance, My Virtual Doctor, as well as the bus pass. And I do want to note that these were numbers that are approved by last year's council. A bit more about the ancillary fees. So couple categories that we do, and I remember talking about this to some of our counselors yesterday as well. So the USC directly administers a bunch of the services, such as the health plan, the dental plan, virtual doctor, student initiatives grant through the grants and recognitions coordinator, and the faculty affiliate grant. The USC keeps a variety of fees, such as those listed there, to run the programming that the USC runs. And then we collect and remit some of the other fees as well to organizations like the Gazette, like the Radio Western, Student Refugee Program, Marching Band. So that money, we get it from Western, and then we give it to those respective organizations immediately. We don't keep that, so we call that a collect and remit. So these are just some of the categories of the ancillary fees that we collect and what we do with them. So this is, I need to keep changing slides here. This is a quick overview of each portfolio, and then after this, I will call on each of my vice presidents to talk about their respective portfolios as well. Once again, you can find the full graph breakdown as well as last year's executive spendings in the council package that was sent out earlier. Just some notes. There wasn't much change in my budgets. I increased the alum and meeting lines because that was used over last year, as well as I increased my lines for presidential initiatives as well as exec initiatives to better be able to support my executives for a year. Basically, the presidential initiatives and exec initiative line is a discretionary budget that is be able to be used by the USC president. The first one is whatever the president chooses to do. So last year, President Henriquez spent a lot of it on her Take Back the Night campaign. So that was a personal initiative that she focused on. And as well as, so this year I kind of upped those lines because I want to make sure that my executives have a lot of exciting ideas and they can pull from these funds as needed. So I guess I'll call on now to Vice President Huck to explain the portfolio lines. Does that work? Okay. I defer my speaking rights to Vice President Huck.
So a couple highlights from budget. I increased initiatives. Portfolio. I reduced student artists just to better reflect that we've seen in years, and I also decided to standardize coordinator budgets to ensure that all coordinators have opportunities to their portfolio.
Awesome. Okay. Next slide. I defer my speaking rights to Vice President Sukija.
Yeah, so looking at the trends from last year, we increased academic and experience campaigns budget line, as well as the wellness and accessibility campaign budget line, since we did a lot of fairs and events and programming, and we continue to do that this year. And then we reduced the campus advocacy and meetings line. The campus advocacy line was just used for one initiative last year. Since this year we plan to do some specific programming within it, we've budgeted it accordingly, and then reduced the meetings line, looking at how it was used last year.
Great. Defer my speaking rights to Vice President Tatizian.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. My portfolio's budget is very much status quo. Now I have 3 coordinator positions, so I now have a municipal affairs coordinator, a federal affairs coordinator, and provincial affairs coordinator. So the federal and provincial affairs coordinator role has split. I increased election readiness ahead of the upcoming municipal election because last year we didn't have to run any get out the vote campaigns, and this year we will, and that's the only reason for that change. Yep.
I defer my speaking rights to Vice President Munyawala.
I've increased quite a few of my portfolio lines just because I feel that there's a lot of room for adding new initiatives, doing new things, and ensuring that we're able to provide more opportunities to students. So my coordinators will have a little bit more room to throw initiatives and start new things.
And finally, last but not least, I defer my speaking rights to Vice President Gill.
So the main changes to my budget was an increase in the meetings line, as well as a small decrease in the USC Town Halls line to reflect kind of what happened last year, but also my approach to focusing on fostering more individual relationships rather than larger scale touch points, hence the increase in meetings line. And then I also focused on increasing the initiatives line as well to allow for more flexibility with understanding the student body and being able to be flexible in what initiatives we provide throughout the year.
Okay, great. So that comes to the end of a very, very quick budget presentation. Again, I will restate to counselors here that this was a very quick overview of some of the budgets and ancillary fees. The majority of these conversations will come in second semester as well, and there will be this presentation again, but a lot more beefed up with a lot more details, and that is something that counselors should, I guess, at that time, if anyone has questions leading up to that period in second semester, always feel free to send an email to me, but this is a very important part of the USC, right, and understanding, and I guess myself personally, so that all counselors understand the financial operations of the USC. And with that, I can take any questions about the budget side of things.
Perfect. Are there any questions for President Shaw or the executive team on the budget at this time? Again, looking to the Zoom, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will call on you. Perfect.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
I would now like to invite Selectman Sunner of the Board of Directors up to deliver the Board of Directors report. Selectman is virtual today, so.
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Suk Min. I'm the board chair for the USC Board of Directors. I'll give you an overview of what the board covered at our most recent meeting on July 18th. First, I'll start with just a note on transition. So back in May, we ratified our new leadership and committee structure. I was elected chair, Harry Yang as vice chair, and the board elected our finance, governance, and HR committee chairs and seated their members, as well as appointing Purple Care and GPC chairs. So the report today reflects the first full working meeting of this year's board. I'll be going through the 4 discussion items, starting with the finance committee. Our finance committee met on July 7th and brought forward 4 recommendations for the board's consideration. The first is a new auditor selection procedure. This establishes a formal process for selecting the USC's external auditor, including a competitive request for proposal review every 5 years. That's a governance best practice since we've retained the same auditor for several years now. And the procedure sets out clear evaluation criteria while emphasizing auditor independence. Alongside this, the committee updated the finance subcommittee's terms of reference to formally include responsibility for recommending the external auditor to the board. The next item is an updated budget approval policy. This authorizes the COO to approve operational spending that's already within the approved annual budget, up to $200,000, once the budget is approved by the Board of Governors. Any contracts above that thresholds that are above that threshold still require approval under our financial approvals policy. The aim is to clearly define delegated spending authority while keeping our governance documents consistent. And the last item is a tranches policy. The committee reviewed the proposed tranches policy, including the addition of a definition section to improve clarity and consistency throughout the document. And as I mentioned earlier, the committee brought forward 4 recommendations to the board, which were to approve the auditor selection procedure and the terms of reference update, to repeal the old operating and capital budget approval policy, to approve the new budget approval policy and procedure, and to approve the tranches policy, all of which were passed. And then onto our governance committee. Our governance committee met on July 7th to review 2 new policies and recommended these to the board. The first is an access management policy, which sets out user access levels and the business justifications required before granting access permissions to current, new, or newly promoted USC members. And the second is an AI policy that outlines parameters for how USC personnel use AI tools. So that would include covering data scrutiny, confidentiality, and ethical use as well, just with attention to potential reputational risks, such as the use of AI in promotional materials on social media. And the motion to approve the governance policy review was passed. And then we had our HR committee who met on July 7th and reviewed 2 policies, which was a travel policy and a professional development policy. So the travel policy sets out high-level principles for booking and approving travel, while the existing detailed procedure still stays in place. The professional development policy formalizes how the USC plans and then also approves professional developments, and the committee recommended both to the board, both of which were passed at the meeting. And lastly, we had a 4 decision item as well. Shivaham Nar will be going on exchange during the fall semester, and after consideration decided it would be best to step down as a board director and move into the observer position. So as a result, a motion was brought forward to ratify Jason Holliday, who originally held the observer position, as the director, and the motion was passed. That concludes my board of directors report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Are there any questions for Director Sunner at this time? Once again, looking at the Zoom. Perfect. Seeing none, thank you, Director Sunner. Now, before we move into the for action section of the agenda, I did just want to flag that we do have a lunch break scheduled for about 12 o'clock there. So we are coming up to about 11:40 there. With that said, I might motion just for a brief recess just ahead of that, take us to 12, hopefully get us into lunch. So with that said, I would move to have about a 15-20 minute recess before we move into the 4 action section of the agenda, just so people have an opportunity to stretch their legs before we break for lunch. Do I have a seconder on that? I see Councillor Booth, and I will now proceed for a vote. So all those in favor of a 20-minute recess? For the record, all opposed? And any abstentions? Perfect. So this meeting will be recessed until 11:56, but we will just carry into lunch at that point. So. So we can call this meeting back to order. Wonderful. The time is now 12:31 on July 26th. I call this meeting back to order. And we now move into the 4 action section of the agenda, beginning with the motion to approve the summer executive reports. So, the motion reads, be it resolved the Council accept the executive reports for July 2026. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you all had a good lunch. Executive reports are probably the most administrative of all the motions. Yeah, that's it, and these will be provided at every council meeting.
Councillor Hamilton, do you have anything to add? With that said, are there any questions to the motion? Are there any amendments to the motion? Is there any debate to the motion? And are there any objections to voting on the motion? Seeing none, Council, I would invite you to please proceed to Echo 360 to vote on the motion. Council, we're just waiting on 2 more votes there. The motion carries. Perfect. That brings us into the motion to endorse the executive roadmap. The motion reads, whereas Council's role in part is to hold the USC executive accountable to achieve their mandate and to represent the interest of the undergraduate students in their work, and whereas endorsement from Council legitimizes and strengthens the ability of the USC executive to achieve their goals in the executive roadmap, be it resolved that Council approve the executive roadmap as presented. Be it further resolved that the USC executive provide updates on new and ongoing initiatives through their executive reports with a focus on purpose and alignment with the executive roadmap. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Booth? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so great conversations with everyone at lunch about some of the ideas around accountability. I think that's something that we all find alignment in, how we provide accountability to both student leaders as well as general students through the roadmap as well, right? I want to reiterate that, again, the thematic approach was very much done so as a means of offering flexibility to the executive team, and I'm hoping that this year is going to be a great exercise for us on the council to use the things that are already built into our systems as accountability. Those specifically being the role of council, so the role of executive reports and questions for the counselors to ask us about updates about certain platform points. The role of counselors themselves being able to field questions from their constituents and our faculty councils to be able to bring up to the executives and at council, as well as new ongoing things outside of control, right? For example, external bodies such as the Gazette and the report on executives, as well as possibly new and exciting USC initiatives led by executives that proactively show the scope of what we're doing within our roadmap, as well as within our presidential and various platforms as well. That being said, I hope that all these things counselors can trust these to be a method of the accountability that we are all have a similar goal towards. And yeah, with that, I think that's hopefully an explanation, and welcome any more questions to this motion.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Booth, do you have anything to add? Perfect. Okay, opening the floor then. Are there any questions to the motion? Are there any amendments to the motion? Is there any debate to the motion? Councillor Dunn?
As much as I can appreciate going forward with future accountability that's taking place over the year, I think there's no cemented point to have that accountability hold. In that sense, I do appreciate that accountability is being taken throughout the year. I do appreciate that as much as I think any other councillor would. What I have a problem with is that we don't have a cemented statute of plan to be held accountable at the beginning of this. There's nothing set in stone or in writing that's telling us that we have to be held accountable, or telling us that there is accountability to be held to if it's one page of points. I think that without expansion on what's going on with our themes, it just seems like we're not having any basis of accountability in that sense. As much as I can appreciate accountability being put forward as a roadmap, like that's a roadmap for the year. There's no set in stone writing. Tell us what we're being held accountable to, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. President Shaw, would you like to respond?
Yeah, again, I had some conversations with counselors over lunch. If they're welcome to change to call it perhaps a theme map instead of a roadmap, we welcome that. But going back to your point there, Councillor Dunn, the idea that, and we talked about this as well, right? It also might be challenging to find 5 specific things that the whole student body wants to be shown in the roadmap, right? There's different priorities over different faculties with different constituencies. I think it would take a lot more work than maybe anticipated on the exec end along with the staff end to identify things that, you know, all students and all counselors would appreciate going to more structured things as well, right? As well as the amount of details that I know we talked about it if you want. Specific tasks, goals, missions, initiatives, projects, the time scope. So I just think we fall under a bit of a rabbit hole as well when it comes to that. But again, fully support your idea. We're just trying to think of the logistical part of administrative part of putting some of those things as well, and the broader consultation that we need from all counselors, right? Put into that.
Thank you, President Shaw. I'll open the floor back up to debate. Councillor El-Shatnami?
Yeah, so I just kind of one thing that I brought up at lunch as a potential recommendation is in the executive reports when the executive team highlights kind of their outputs and what they're doing for their roles and how they're executing it, that it be aligned to correspond to the theme, so we can kind of see as a council how each initiative is being applied to that specific theme, if it will help with the accountability sense. I noticed kind of that there is a what's next section in the executive reports for each executive, so that could potentially be a method to kind of highlight accountability and have it be aligned to each of the themes in the executive roadmap. But yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. President Shaw, did you want to respond?
Yeah, fully agree with that, and that was the original intention with these executive reports in the first place, right? Like the accountability from the exec center to report on how our activities are fitting into those themes. If some of them are really, really, really obvious, right? But then there's might be a bit of explanation about how it fits in specifically. But fully welcome that. That was the original intention with all this as well.
Councillor Group?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth noting, we want students to feel like the council's representing them, but also at the end of the day, like they've kind of put their faith in us to be able to make those judgments for them. Like, is what President Shaw is doing representative of the things that he was elected on? So if it's sort of a more broad strokes approach to allow for a little more flexibility, then we need to recognize that, you know, that means it's up to us to identify what's going right and what's going wrong. And then obviously if it's a more broad approach, President Shaw just needs to accept that, you know, we might have questions or concerns, making sure that it relates. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a matter of us identifying, in my opinion, is this in line with the broad strokes plan that's been put before us? And if we want specifics, that's just sort of something we have to ask for on a case-by-case basis. Like if someone wants to see how this relates to any one of the given values, that's a question that can be provided because we kind of have access to President Shaw and the executive that normal students wouldn't. So in my mind, I think it's fair as long as President Shaw is willing to, you know, be willing to explain himself, which thus far it seems like certainly is not an issue. Thank you.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. President Shaw?
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Crew. Yeah, so I think we had some conversations over lunch with some of the councillors as well, right? And an overall theme of execs and our staff end of things is to empower council more to do its job. And the two-way communications of the USC and its proactiveness, but also the role of councillors and literally their role to their constituents and to their individual faculty councils and affiliate councils on reporting. So yeah, I think there's like we can do things on our end, but also councillors as well. We want to empower all councillors to ask good questions. We want to hear these questions as well about the things we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Lai?
I just have a comment on the roadmap. I don't think we necessarily need another method of accountability. I think the executive reports are good. I think students trust us to be leaders. But the problem with accountability in this roadmap is I was looking through the 2025-2026 roadmap, and it's a bit more detailed in what the goals are and kind of setting in stone what their objectives are for the year. Then by doing that, students can publicly see the roadmap and then hold the counselors accountable to see if they match those goals. I think the current draft of the roadmap is just a little too broad in some pages, or there might be more things you can expand on just to list. Even if it's you don't have to consult every student and be these are exactly detailed what I'm gonna do. Just kind of a broad hypothesis or objective that you want to do, or what you think is feasible, just to put a little bit more detail on the roadmap. But I think the accountability portion is good in that sense, executive reports, but we just need a little bit more detail so that students can know what to hold counselors accountable to.
Right. Thank you for that. Fully welcome that approach as well. What did I want to say here? Yeah, so when you mentioned last year's executive roadmap, right? It was great. I appreciate as a counselor understanding the things that they want to do under each bucket. But at the end of the year, there was actually also no direct accountability through it either. There wasn't a report that said which of these things were actually done, which of these they weren't done. That was also kind of somewhat done through the motions of accepting executive reports, right? So that's just kind of the whole theme that we're, I guess, debating on, is if the specificness of it will actually attribute to the specificness of initiatives and programming does actually contribute to accountability, when, as you said yourself, the accountability is built into the structure of council and councilors itself. I welcome if you want to raise an amendment, but again, it's I go back to the conversation or the discussion we had with Councillor Dunn regarding the specifics, right? Do we have 3 things, or should we have 5 things, or 7 things? And I think that's just very hard to agree on as well.
Thank you. Before I allow any councillors to speak twice to this debate, I just want to scan the Zoom. Is there anybody else who had a point of debate who has not spoken yet? Councillor Suleiman?
Yeah, I guess this was just kind of like a reiteration of what's been said earlier, but another thing that I was just wanting, I guess, the council to consider is the impact, I guess, that this may have on your abilities to carry out your roles, in a sense that if your constituents are wanting to approach you with questions regarding executive or USC progress in general, the lack of concrete deliverables that they can consistently follow up with you on during your consultation periods, I feel like it does impact the capacity for students to like be empowered themselves to hold the USC accountable if they're pretty much being, like, I don't want this to be like an antagonistic framing of things, but if they're being denied specific like measured steps that our organization is taking. That was just something that I wanted to clarify with the council.
Thank you, Councillor. President Shaw?
Fair. I think that's a fair point. I would hope that counselors would also feel empowered to know that the themes and also through the exec reports and just general understanding of the USC to deliver some of those things back to the student body as well who are inquiring.
Are there any further points of debate on this motion? Again, looking to the Zoom. Perfect. Seeing none, are there any objections to voting on this motion? Seeing none again, Council, please proceed to Echo 360 to vote. Council, we're just waiting on one more vote there. The motion carries. Perfect. Brings us into the next motion, which is the motion to approve the executive budget. The motion reads, whereas the executives have developed a budget for the 2026-2027 academic year based off previous council-approved numbers and previous executive spendings, and whereas Bylaw 1 allows the executive to present modifications to the approved executive budget provided that there are no changes to the bottom line, and whereas the budget supports the themes of the executive roadmap and content of the presidential platform, be it resolved that council approve the 2026-2027 executive budget. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Antonelli? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, okay, so for this budget motion again, just wanted to say that if you take a look at last year's, as well as we can budget and account for the things we want to do throughout the year, every year people underspend / overspend on certain lines, and as long as that final number at the bottom of the budget sheet doesn't is bigger than the bigger number, or that did not make sense at all. It's bigger than the allocated number, then we're good. And actually, if we really want to go that way to an extreme, as long as the total executive spending does not go above that $1.3 million number and whatever specifics I talked about earlier, that is also okay. But I don't think we've ever had a case where certain executives really overspend on their portfolios. And if they ever do, I think that is a question that counselors should be asking as well for transparency. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that final lines don't change. You can't move salary to programming, and that these numbers are more or less flexible throughout the year as well because people always overspend / underspend.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Antonelli, do you have anything to add? Perfect. With that said, are there any questions to this motion? Are there any amendments to this motion? Are there any points of debate to this motion? And are there any objections to voting on this motion? Seeing none, Council, please proceed to Echo 360 to vote. Just waiting on two more there, Council. The motion carries. Perfect. We now move to the motion to approve the amended 2026-2027 legislative calendar. The motion reads, whereas USC Council requires an approved legislative calendar to guide meetings and governance timelines, and whereas the legislative calendar approved in the May 2026 AGM posts scheduling issues due to statutory holidays and contractual limitations, be it resolved that USC Council amend the 2026-2027 legislative calendar to reflect the dates proposed in Appendix 1. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dunn. President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so very quickly, it's our administrative team was able to flag this to my attention. The two changes that are proposed in this motion is to, number one, identify the fact that on the September 30th meeting falls on Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is a statutory holiday. So that means if a Part 2 meeting is needed for that month, that shall be moved to the Monday, which I believe is the 28th. Additionally, to fulfill the contractual limitations of the speaker, the final AGM date was moved so that it falls within the speaker's employment contract.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Dunn, do you have anything to add? Thank you. With that said, are there any questions to this motion? Are there any amendments to this motion? Are there any points of debate to this motion? And are there any objections to voting on this motion? Seeing none, I would again invite Council to proceed to Echo 360 to vote. The motion carries. Perfect. Now we move to the motion to establish the Student Life Standing Committee and integrate the University Affairs and External Affairs Committees into the Advocacy Committee. The motion reads, whereas in 2025-2026, Council passed an updated advocacy approvals policy and created an executive portfolio review policy, and whereas those policies require more regular and consistent engagement from Council in advocacy and service reviews, and whereas there is often significant overlap between the University and External Affairs Standing Committee, be it resolved that the Standing Committee terms of reference be amended to join the two existing advocacy standing committees, and be it further resolved that Council create a Student Life Standing Committee to support and receive the service reviews mandated by the Executive Portfolio Review Policy. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zabian? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, okay, so this one's a mouthful, guys, and this one's probably one of the more interesting motions of today, I would say. I was saying this to councillors around at lunchtime that it's actually a lot more administrative than it looks, and I'll kind of explain the processes and context behind this and how it came to be. I guess starting off, as was said in yesterday's training, there are three standing committees of the USC Council. That specifically being the Governance and Finance Standing Committee, which I sit on, that being the University Affairs and the External Affairs Standing Committees, which Vice President Titizian and Vice President Sukija individually, respectively, sit on as well. And there has to be three standing committee at all times. So yes, last year we found a couple things happen that I want to bring for councilors' knowledge. Number one, there was found to be a redundancy in the conversations that were happening on the University Affairs and the External Affairs Standing Committees. A lot of those meetings ran short, correct? Yeah, they ran short, and that there wasn't a lot of actual conversation and engagement within those standing committees themselves. And number two, this was something that was passed from last year's council, but the council last year decided to pass a motion that called for the creation of service review committees as a sense for USC executives to provide more of a transparency among the actual services that their individual portfolio runs. So for example, things like early outreach, Enviro USC, things like that itself. So with that motion being passed successfully, we now need to house that under a separate standing committee. And I think it was decided at that time that, to the best of my understanding, that it's not really appropriate for the Governance and Finance Standing Committee, and also wouldn't be very appropriate for each of the UA or the EA standing committees as well. So this motion was discussed, I guess, this idea was discussed for the executives as long as our staff, along with understanding of what happened last year, to merge the two advocacy committees into one bigger, just advocacy standing committee. And with that being the requirement for a third additional standing committee, establishment of a new student life committee. Now this also plays quite nicely as well with the fact that you might have noticed that the VP Student Engagement, the VP Orientation and Programming, and the VP of Student Services do not currently have any sort of a role on a standing committee. So this would also give counselors a greater chance to engage with those specific vice presidents and ask any questions about their services and programming. Additionally, the most important fact is that this new Student Life Committee would be the ones who will receive the report of the service review committees. Sorry, that's all a mouthful. They will receive the reports of the Student Life Committee, and then they will discuss that at a standing level committee to then bring it to bigger council for approval. So that kind of is the context for it. I'm just reviewing my notes to see if I missed anything. No, and okay, and yeah, defer my time back to speaker.
Perfect. Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Zabian, do you have anything you would like to add? Wonderful. Thank you. With that said, are there any questions to this motion? Councillor Suleiman?
Sorry, I was just curious. Are we only limited to 3 standing committees within the USC, or is there opportunities to like go beyond that capacity?
To my understand,
Go ahead, President Shaw.
to my understanding, I might need staff to confirm this as well. That's laid out in one of our standing committee policies.
I will defer to you on this, Dane. Is any further response needed from you, President Shaw?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Moving back to questions to this motion. Councillor El Shetnoui?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know how big would these committees roughly be, like in comparison to the old, the old committees. Yeah.
President Shaw?
Right. On the standing committee terms of reference, each standing committee, and not just for 16 ordinary members, so the councillors, as long as ex officio non-voting members being the executives, and kind of provide some more context to those meetings as well. So one of the things that was, if we merged the advocacy committees and didn't have a new committee, then that advocacy committee would have like 32 people. That's not going to be very, that's almost a mini council meeting right there. So but like that's why we decided to have that one, but also give counselors another opportunity, in which we'll have to do on administrative level to kind of repick their repick their favorite standing committees to sit on as well afterwards.
Perfect. Back to the floor. Councillor Al-Kaidi?
So I was just wondering, what's the reasoning behind service review, student life committee, if they're so intertwined with the service process?
President Shaw?
Great.
I'll defer my speaking rights to Vice President Zukija to explain
Vice
that.
President Sukija?
Yeah, so as President Shah mentioned, the Student Life Planning Committee will be receiving reports from the Service Review Committee and like looking at those recommendations. And because the Student Life Committee would also have the vice presidents, they'd be able to discuss those recommendations rather than just them being in isolation.
Thank you. Back to the floor. Councillor Sullivan?
Sorry, lots of questions. Just looking at like the proposed definition of like what the role of the student life committee is. I don't know if this is like a personal misunderstanding, but it does seem to replicate the role of like the University Affairs Committee when it comes to the evaluation of like executive programming and initiatives. Maybe the frequency will be accelerated if we had like a separate committee. However, like it doesn't seem like a significant enough role that's like separate from what's already being done internally to warrant the creation of like an entirely new committee. So I was just curious as to, are there any other like responsibilities that fall within this new committee's role that would differ from what's already being done presently?
President Shaw?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer my speaking rights to Vice President Zakisha.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So the Advocacy Standing Committee, or the UA, specifically deals with advocacies, which includes position papers, which includes looking at reviews of relationships with external representative groups such as CASA, coming up and collecting student feedback and using those to, again, work on position papers, as well as more so create policies around advocacy related and campus related areas. Whereas the Student Life Committee, I would say, is more so just looking at the services and the programming that the USC runs, which is quite different from the Advocate, and in a way also receiving annual reports from the vice presidents, which we do not do in the UA or the EA committee, and that's how I would say those.
Are there further questions to the motion? Councillor Dunn.
My question's in regards to membership of the committees that would be merged. In that sense, I know that Speaker Lovely did mention at the beginning of the meeting that there would be a kind of vote sent out or a form sent out for registration going forward. My question is, how would that process go about? Is there would that not further kind of delay the vote of the members of the council, vote of the members of the committees that are going forward? Would that not further delay it to the next council meeting?
President Shaw?
Great, I'll speak on my end, and maybe I'll defer to staff support for the administrative side of it. But yeah, if this motion passes, then there would be obviously the terms would change for the standing committees, and then I know there has been previous forms that were sent out for councilors to express interest on the standing committees that they're most interested in sitting on. If this motion passes, I just, after some discussion with staff, we didn't feel it was comfortable for everyone to make such a quick decision if they had something they really want to sit on, and now with the introduction. So we want to give that a couple more time as well. And then I now want to defer to the staff to talk about the actual process of how the new interest and voting will be done for chairs and standing committee selection.
Before I say anything, do you want to add anything, Dane, or? Absolutely, I was going to say, from staff's perspective on this, we are prepared to give as much of a runway as is necessary for making sure that people feel comfortable reestablishing their choices. A form, again, will be sent around to hopefully let people redecide what they want to do. You have access to the proposed standing committee terms of reference, and we are also prepared for a bit of a work back schedule where, with the obligations that we have to standing committees in August, we can work via means of either an electronic vote or myself sitting as an interim chair for making sure that their proceedings appropriate for making sure that council goes forward with what it needs to go forward with. Anything to add to that, or? much like there were standing committee trainings earlier in the year, for any chair support that's required, happy to do sessions if that is something that council feels is necessary for feeling comfortable in those roles. With that said, are there any further questions to the motion? Councillor Abdelrahman on Zoom.
I just have a quick question. I hope you guys can hear me, but with regards to merging the two, would that not decrease the efficiency of internal and external affairs? Like, instead of it being two separate committees, now that it would be merged into one, could it be that you overlook either internal or external affairs because now it's gonna kind of be merged into one? I hope my question's clear.
No, thank you, President Shaw.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'll defer to Vice President Sukisha to explain the processes of the efficiency, the workflow.
Would I be audible? Like, am I audible to you? Is that okay? Perfect.
Yeah.
So merging standing committees, actually the reason we were trying to merge them is because we wanted to make it more efficient. Knowing that I have sat on the University Affairs Standing Committee before, and as President Shah has previously mentioned, there were times when we used to not have much to discuss, so there was very less engagement. In a way, sort of merging the two committees also allows the councillors to have more input on both external and internal advocacy being done, and how much collaboration and sort of I would say streamlining exists between advocacy efforts, and so that they're not being done in isolation either. Both Vice President Titizian and I have spoken about how we would like to strengthen advocacy this year moving forward, especially unifying the priorities so that the asks and the advocacy that we do is its core focus is on students' voices, and I think the merging would actually help it become more efficient than less efficient.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? This will be last call for questions on this motion. Seeing none then, are there any amendments to this motion? Seeing none, is there any debate on this motion? And are there any objections to voting on the motion? Seeing none, Council, please proceed to echo to vote. Just waiting on an additional 2 votes there, Council. The motion carries. Once again, just for chair commentary, we'll be sending around a form so that councillors can re-indicate their preferences for standing committees. Take the time to review the terms of reference. We'll follow up, and then as training is required, as councillors feel it is necessary, we will also follow up with you about that. Moving into the next motion, we move into the motion to elect a councillor representative to the Service Review Committee. Just a reminder that we did amend this motion earlier in the agenda. Although the wording is not reflected here, I will make sure to read the reflected wording when I read the motion. With that said, the motion reads, Whereas the Executive Portfolio Review Framework provides for the review of executive-led services and programs to ensure accountability and effective stewardship of student resources, and whereas Council representation on the Service Review Committee supports transparency, oversight, and student input throughout the review process, be it resolved that Council elect 5 councillors to serve on the Service Review Committees, 1 councillor to serve on the review committees for each of the following services for the 2026-2027 term: Reach, Charity, Enviro USC, Public Arts, and the Income Tax Clinic. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rahab? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Great, thank you. So once again, everyone, this was a motion that was carried over by last year's council, where the original thought behind this was for councillors to have a bigger involvement in USC services and operations. Just looking at the schedule, just to reiterate for everyone, the 5 services that are you, and they were picked by our senior admin. And before that, so there was actually a reshuffle of some of the portfolios. They now are housed under some different VPs, but I'll just quickly read them out. All of the services that are set for review in 2026, 2027 will be housed under the Vice President Student Services, with the exception of Enviro USC and the Public Arts Commission. So those will be housed under the Vice President of Orientation and Programming. And yeah, I welcome this, and last year's discussion was, I think this is a great way for counselors to be more involved with certain USC services that they want to see, I guess, or get more information from.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Robb, do you have anything you would like to add? Perfect. With that said, we can now open the floor to nominations. So before we begin, I will remind council that councillors who nominate themselves for the election positions will have 2 minutes to speak to council about their candidacy, followed by a 2-minute question period. When you nominate, please raise your placard. All interested, Michaela and I will assemble sort of a speakers list. We will call you up in alphabetical order. Come to the podium one by one. We'll begin your time. You'll make your speech, and then we will move to an election from that point. So with that said, I will now invite any nominations from the floor or via Zoom. Please raise your placard if you wish to self-nominate for the positions. I see Councillor Antonelli, Councillor Hamilton. A reminder that there are 5 positions available. The Zoom as well. Councillor Osei Tutu. So as far as that goes, are there further nominations from the floor at this point? Not seeing any. So with respect to those 3 elections, those elections are uncontested and therefore acclaimed. We can send away the 2 positions to a future council meeting, but for right now we can work to ratify those 3 elections that are upcoming. So with that said, again, we have Councillor Antonelli, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Osei Tutu for the service review committees. Oh, Councillor Balthazar? Okay, absolutely. So that would be, Councillor Dunn as well? Awesome. So are there further nominations from the floor then? Go ahead, Councillor Lai.
I just have a question. Like, for the service review committee, is it like, are you running a group or something? Like, what entails this role?
President Shaw.
Thank you for the question. As outlined, I think reference, it's an opportunity to work with some of the executives on a more closer level to understand more about the services, right? So if that in terms of, what are the core events that the service runs a year, how much money is being put into each event, what the coordinators are doing, what's the outcome, what's the output, if it's charity, how much money is being raised for these events. It's really just a further understanding of the specific portfolio that the executives are running and getting a counselor insight into that as well. And I hope that answers your question.
hopefully that answers the question. I will do a last call for nominations then with that question answered. Perfect. Seeing none, we can move to acclaim those. I would invite, if Councillor so desired, you still are afforded the opportunity to speak to the election if you would so like. Just raise your placard, let us know if you would like to speak. Okay. Therefore, then, we can move to acclaim these elections. So once again, our successful host of candidates includes Councillor Antonelli, Councillor Osei Tutu, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Balthazar, and Councillor Dunn. Are there any questions to this election? Councillor Antonelli?
I'm not 100% clear on this, but is it each councillor sits on one of these 5 review committees, correct?
President Shaw?
Yes.
So how is it decided who sits on which, I guess?
I'll defer to staff if there's a...
Randomly, okay.
Perfect. Are there any further questions? Councillor El-Shatnoui?
Yeah, this might be like a niche statement, but I'm just concerned with like the elections, like in terms of like counselors like being placed in a specific committee, if there's like a conflict of interest of them being involved in that specific service, like especially if it's like REACH or the income tax clinic, if there is a conflict of interest, but I guess that does fall on the responsibility of the specific counselor. If that could just be clarified, that'd be great.
President Shaw?
That's a great point. I welcome your careful thought into this, and I don't think this was discussed at last year's meeting when this took place. I welcome any proposed or amendments to the policy I'll defer to Dane.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, are there any amendments to this motion? Are there any points of debate? And are there any objections to voting to ratify this election? Seeing none, I would invite council to move to Echo 360 to vote to ratify the election of the 5 councillors. Council just waiting on 2 more votes there. Perfect. The election carries. Congratulations to the 5 successful candidates. We will follow up with you after the meeting.
Yay!
So procedure. sorry. Procedurally, next in the order, we did have the motion to elect the standing committee chairs, but seeing as council has already decided on the motion to rearrange or merge the standing committees, that motion is no longer necessary. So President Shaw, do you wish to withdraw the motion to elect standing committee chairs?
Yes, I withdraw this motion.
Thank you. Perfect. We now move to the ratification of the board chair. The motion reads, be it resolved that council ratify the appointment of Sukhman Sunner as board chair of the USC Board of Directors for the 2026-2027 term. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Suleiman? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Great, yeah. So as Sukhman mentioned in her chair report, the board conducted a board retreat. So the board's version of this retreat last week in Toronto, as the board tradition. Even before that, Sukhman was already voted in as chair through a online board meeting conducted a couple months ago. Sukhman's role in council this year would be to provide a board report for all councillors, and as well as to bring to attention any items of discussion or contention that would require both council and board's understanding and approval of. So that is what you can expect from Sukhman's role. I advise that you can contact me or Sukhman directly for any board inquiries, but this will also be a good exercise for us throughout the year to determine if things are if there's council jurisdiction, board jurisdiction, or both, which is more rare, but that is the role of Sukhman this year. And also for everyone's information, I sit on the board as well as a regular board director.
Thank you, President Shaw. Councillor Suleiman, do you have anything you would like to add? Awesome. Perfect. With that said, are there any questions to this motion? Are there any amendments to this motion? Are there any points of debate to this motion? And are there any objections to voting on this motion? Seeing none, I'd once again invite council to proceed to echo to vote. The motion carries. And lastly, before we move into questions and comments from the Western community, procedurally we did have the ratification of the standing committees as the last motion for action at this meeting. But again, due to the decision that was made earlier in the meeting, President Shaw, do you wish to withdraw this motion?
I withdraw this motion.
Thank you. Perfect. I'm not aware of any other items for information or discussion at this time. I will remind council that due to the vote on standing committee structure, a form will be sent around for committees for yourselves to communicate committee preference, Additionally, the form for determining whether you would like to volunteer to deliver the land acknowledgement, the meetings will be sent around. Now for comments and questions from the Western community. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom. When recognized, state your question. Although I think it's just us here today, so I don't see any members. So seeing as that is the case, we will conclude the question period for this meeting. Now moving into new business. Is there any new business to be brought up at this meeting? A reminder that it should be time sensitive. President Shaw?
Yes, I have new business. Do I send it to you, state the intent of new business?
If you could state the intent of the new business first.
Okay, so as we heard from the board chair's report, everyone, a board director has stepped down and we have a new board director on the board. So my new business motion is an administrative function for the council to recognize the newly appointed board director. Send the motion to the speaker for dispersion as well.
Yeah, if you could please send me the motion in exact wording and then I can share it with the rest of council. Council, this motion will be posted in the main council channel. But the motion reads, whereas USC Council is responsible for ratifying appointments to the boards of directors, and whereas there has been a resignation on the board of directors resulting in an unfilled seat, and whereas the selected director has been appointed through a process aligned with USC bylaws in terms of reference, be it resolved that USC Council ratify Jason Holliday as a member of the board of directors for the 2026-2027 term. Be it further resolved that the ratified director begin their term immediately upon approval. President Shaw moves the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lai? President Shaw, would you like to speak to the motion?
Nope, purely administrative. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Councillor Lai, would you like to add anything? Perfect. With that said, are there any questions to the motion? Are there any amendments to the motion? Are there any points of debate to the motion? And are there any objections to voting on the motion? Seeing none, I would invite council to please vote via show of placards or hands on the Zoom, beginning first with all those in favor. All opposed? And any abstentions? With that, then, that motion carries. Jason Holliday is ratified to the Board of Directors. Perfect. On to our last motion of the meeting. I then move to terminate this meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zabian. All in favor? Don't be too quick with it now. Those opposed? And any abstentions? Perfect. Thanks, Council. This meeting is adjourned at 1:27 p.m. on July 26th. Woo! Before you all leave, if we could please get a group photo. Do you want to get it at the front? Where do you want to get it?